Hello and welcome to Pockenrop. This video is part of a brand new series that I'm going to do on Paul McCartney albums. He's my favourite artist of all time, and I'm going to be ranking the tracks on each of his albums. I use the PubMeeple ranking engine to do that, which takes this brilliant approach of you entering the data and then you compare one against one until you've resolved your list. The McCartney album was released in 1970. Its reviews at the time were about how surprising the lack of production was on it. And it's worth noting that McCartney plays every note and every drum beat on this album. And with the exception of harmony vocals from his then new wife Linda, he sings every note as well. This is a truly solo affair. It has been described as being ramshackle, or unfinished, inconsequential, or insubstantial. So let's dive in with the track I've placed as my least favourite off the album at number 13, which for me is the definition of insubstantial, and it's Valentine Day. There are many reasons for this. It's an instrumental. That's by no means a bad thing. It's actually worth noting that 5 of the 13 tracks on here are instrumentals, but it lacks anything that sticks in my brain. I've known this song for over 30 years, and with the exception of having just listened to it to remind myself about it, I cannot recall it to mind. Part of that is due to the track that follows it, but we'll come to that in a moment. But my number 13 on here, Valentine Day, it's got nothing. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just insubstantial. At number 12, I have placed That Will Be Something, which is the track immediately preceding Valentine Day. It's, again, somewhat insubstantial. There's very little lyrical content. It's a rock riff more than anything else, a half-finished idea. It is a spiritual brother in many ways to something like Why Don't We Do It in the Road? But it does have something going for it. The playing on it is energetic and enjoyable, and that's really pulled into sharp focus when you hear the incredibly anodyne version that's done on the MTV Unplugged album and video. That all of the rawness that is on the McCartney version is stripped out by Unplugged, and it makes an insubstantial song even more insubstantial. My number 12. And number 11 is the track that many would put right at the bottom, and that's Kreen Akrore. It closes the album. It's another instrumental, but it's got some very searing guitar playing on it. It's almost grungy feeling. It's really, really good. I remember hearing this in 1989 and thinking, what the actual... And in many cases, when I listen to it again, I still do. It's a really odd way to end an album, but that whole middle section where he's playing the drums and you're hearing the breathing, and it represents a hunt chase, which is interesting because not long after this is when he became a vegetarian, and hunting animals for food was completely off limits for him. Really of its time kind of thing, Kreen Akrore, and it demonstrates for me that actually McCartney was still the avant-garde Beatle, despite the kind of things that Lennon had been doing with the Two Virgins and unfinished music. Kreen Akrore, my number 11. At number 10, I have placed Singalong Junk. Not because it isn't beautiful, it is. It's really beautifully played, but it's a kind of... I don't see the point of it. We have the song Junk, which I will come to in time, but it's kind of... It doesn't need to be there, and it could define the word filler. It's not a long album, McCartney. And when you consider you've got Junk and then you've got a longer version that's instrumental called Singalong Junk, it's filler. It's beautiful, but it is filler. We don't need it when we've got Junk. Number 10. And at number 9, I have got Teddy Boy. So this is the first song that I've got in the list that I think's got any real substance to it, but I don't particularly like it. This was first trialled with the Beatles, and if you want to hear the version on Anthology 3, go ahead and listen to that. So the Beatles tried playing this through, I think either during the White Album or the Abbey Road sessions, and it's mocked mercilessly by Lennon in the recording that's on Anthology, and I can see why. It's not... If this had not been released, we would not be trumpeting this as a great lost McCartney or indeed Beatle classic, like we do something like Water Spout or Yvonne, because it's fluff, total and utter fluff. It's the pizza and fairy tales that McCartney gets criticised over writ large. That said, it's better than everything else I've previously mentioned in my view. At number 8, I've placed another very unfinished piece, and this is The Lovely Linda. This opens the album. This is the start of McCartney's solo career. And it's a 2-line song. It's clearly a test piece that he was trialing stuff out. And yet the bass playing on it is beautiful. It's wonderful, and particularly on this half-speed master, because the bass really gets ramped up on it. It's the one song on here that I genuinely wish was longer. I wish he'd done more with this. And while I'm talking about The Lovely Linda, I want to point out that this is to my knowledge, the only song in his career that he released that specifically names his wife. I'd like to contrast that with something that Lennon did frequently on his albums, where he name checks Yoko throughout. And in many cases, this takes a good song and diminishes it, because all of a sudden it takes the universality of a love song that he's written about his wife and makes it about a specific person. And thankfully, McCartney only does this on The Lovely Linda, which is the start of his career. And yet we know he wrote so many love songs about this woman. But the fact that he doesn't include her name means that they become universal. So at number 8, The Lovely Linda. At number 7 is the side 1 closer, Man We Was Lonely. Right. Now, this song has rarely grabbed me, but it is a song. At least it is a complete unit of a song. I don't think it hits the mark as a side 1 closer, that being the desire to flip the record and listen to side 2. I don't think Man We Was Lonely meets that criteria. It's the first time we hear Linda's vocals on the album, and they are very welcome. That harmony she provides, which will become a staple of the Wings sound, is there early on. Man We Was Lonely isn't good, but it's good enough as a track on McCartney. My number 6 is Mama Miss America. Now, I have dismissed this over the years and considered it an instrumental, but nothing more. But the more I've listened to it, the more I've heard just how much musical invention is in there. Like many of the tracks on here, I wish he'd taken more time to work and develop them. But Mama Miss America is a good album track, and I really enjoy listening to it. Both parts of it, including that introduction, the spoken word of Rock and Roll Springtime, take 1, and yet it becomes something different. Mama Miss America, I think, is actually pretty decent. Into my top 5 tracks on here. And at number 5, I have placed Junk. Now, I've already said I love the melody of Junk. I think the playing is beautiful. I do find it a shame that actually this wasn't worked on by the Beatles. It could have easily been on the White Album. It's White Album quality. It's a lovely, lovely song, Junk. And I even like the cover version done about 6 months after it came out by John Denver. I think Junk is a really, really fine song. And we're getting into the stuff now that I think make McCartney a good album. At number 4, the side 2 opener, Ooh You. Now, I place this a lot higher than many would, but I love the guitar work on this. And yes, I know the lyrics are insubstantial in exactly the same way as something like That Would Be Something, the criticism I level at that. But this song has always held a little bit of a mystique for me. I used to own a complete Beatles music book, and for some reason, Ooh You was in it. So I was really keen to hear this track that I didn't know that's in a book of music that I'm playing along to on my guitar. And I love it. As a result, it's got some kind of hold on me that some of the more equally insubstantial material doesn't have. I really, really like Ooh You. The riff is fantastic. The vocal is really fun. And I feel it's a good opener to side 2. At number 3, I've placed probably my favourite McCartney instrumental from his entire career, and it is Hot as Sun. Or as it's titled on the album, Hot as Sun / Glasses. I really, really like the Wings version that they do live on the Wings Last Flight bootleg. So check that out. It's also available as a result on the McCartney Archive edition of McCartney. But Hot as Sun is just a great instrumental. He wrote this in 1959 and then did nothing with it. Pulled it out of his bag when he was recording McCartney. And then we've got the weirdness of that rock and roll style tune going into Glasses, where he was doing that thing with water glasses where you play and you circle around of different sounds. It's a really weird experimental McCartney thing. That's kind of something he'll return to, that experimentalism, when he comes to McCartney 2. And then finally, the thing that kind of stops it being a true instrumental is that tiny little snippet we get of Suicide. A song that actually leaves you wanting more. And then when you hear the full version of it, you think, actually, I want less. that tiny snippet is just enough of Suicide. Hot as Sun, Glasses is my number 3. And at number 2 is Every Night. The first song that he, when he was recording McCartney, recognised needed a little bit more production value and work, and he went into Abbey Road Studios to do something with. I love Every Night, and I always have. This seems to be a song about, it seems a joyful song, but it's actually about how he was reacting to the decline and the breakup with the Beatles. And again, the version that's on Unplugged strips it of some of that magic that is there on the McCartney album. And so finally to number 1. No surprises. I would be surprised if anybody did a ranking video of McCartney and did not place this at number 1. It is, of course, Maybe I'm Amazed. A perfect song, quite possibly his very best solo song. And that's saying something. But it makes me kind of cross. It is such a good song, and yet it was not released as a single. This song would have been a number 1 hit. I'm absolutely sure of it. It is that good. One of his finest ever vocal performances, his finest instrumental performancing. It would have been a hit. Maybe I'm Amazed is brilliant, and it is the reason why, in my view, McCartney as an album is held in high regard. It's fantastic. The funny thing about this album is each song, with the exception of perhaps Maybe I'm Amazed and Every Night, is ramshackle. It is perhaps unfinished. But when it's smashed together as a whole, it is definitely bigger than the sum of its parts. I would only really rank the top 6 tracks as being good. The rest of them are all right. But the whole thing come together is cohesive. It works. And that's kind of surprising. There's a lot of daring on this album, given the fact that 5 of the 13 tracks are instrumentals. That's over a third of an album. And it's your opening statement as a solo artist. In fact, given the level of screw you that I think he was feeling towards his fellow Beatles at the time, I'm surprised in many ways that he didn't actually title this as a dig at John and Yoko as actually unfinished music. It is an unfinished album, but it's definitely greater than the sum of its parts. McCartney. So that's my ranking. Let me know yours in the comments below. Where would you put these 13 tracks? And please remember to like the video, subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. The next video in this series is obviously going to be Ram. So come back to see what I rank the 12 tracks of Ram. But until then, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.